Well, now there is here new evidence today of the growing crisis in hospital accident and emergency departments. A leaked letter from 20 A&E bosses in the West Midlands has warned that they face the prospect of offering unsafe care to patients. And another senior NHS official told MPs that many A&E departments were abandoning the government's 4-hour target for treating patients because of soaring demand. Our health and social care correspondent Victoria MacDonald has spent the day at a hospital in Devon to see how it is coping with the pressure.
Even on a quiet Tuesday, the emergency department at the Royal Devon and Exeter Hospital seemed busy. A steady flow of patients, elderly and young. But there is, unlike in many other hospitals around the country, no crisis here. It wasn't always this calm, though. A couple of years ago, you had some bad winters. Can you describe for me what you mean by bad?
Bad's fairly easy to describe. It's feeling that you can't cope, feeling that you're not sure where your patients are in the department, how ill all your patients are in the department. When we've got patients queuing down the corridor and you can't be certain how ill they are, that's a very bad sensation. And if it's bad for the staff, it's far, far worse for the patients and their relatives.
So they changed their system. They opened new beds, took on more staff and involved local GPs to see how they could get the numbers down and take that pressure off.
In fact, we've seen no growth, and part of that is to do with a information campaign aimed particularly at young people, or the sort of 18 to 30s. So that's one facet, and the hospital have made massive changes in terms of supporting us and pulling patients out of the department.
And they are indeed now bucking a national trend. Elsewhere, doctors are using words like intolerable, toxic and overcrowded to describe their emergency departments. Some are today admitting they've dropped the 4-hour waiting target. There is now intense pressure, not just on hospitals, but on the government itself, to sort this problem out. Only today, a leaked letter from 20 consultants warns that the crisis in A&E units is now so severe that they can no longer guarantee the safety of patients. So today, the Health Secretary was called to the House of Commons to answer an emergency question.
In the 35 weeks he has been Health Secretary, major A&Es have missed the target in 33 of them. Mr. Speaker, his complacency is dangerous.
Not as dangerous, the Health Secretary said, as the contract GPs signed under Labour, which changed out-of-hours care.
Perhaps he should go and visit some A&E departments, talk to some A&E consultants, talk to some doctors, talk to some nurses, because they will tell him that those changes in the GP contract, which he is saying have nothing to do with the pressures on A&E, have had a huge and devastating impact.
Indeed, in an earlier briefing, Mr Hunt warmed to the theme of GPs and their responsibility for the crisis, even chastising them for not knowing their patients' names.
I may not know all of them, but I certainly know most of them by name.
We didn't put him to the test. But as a Devon GP, Dr Jenner has worked closely with the Exeter Hospital on diverting patients from the emergency department. So to blame family doctors, he says, is too simplistic.
I hope he's going to come up with a whole system solution that, yes, looks at GP access, looks at GP out of hours, but also look at what is happening inside hospitals and just how sick some of these people are who are attending A&E.
Where there is an agreement between the government, GPs and hospital staff is that this is an emergency in parts of the country, and that no matter who or what is to blame, it does require radical solutions, and probably before next winter.
Victoria MacDonald down in Devon. Well, I'm joined now by Dr Patrick Cadogan, Registrar of the Royal College of Physicians, and the man whose testimony Jeremy Hunt seized upon today in the Commons to blame Labour for the decline of out-of-hours GPs. You are in the middle of a political firestorm because, in a sense, you have nailed your colours to one specific issue that clearly does clog A&E, and that is the fact that people are not happy with what now exists once doctors go home.
Well, I think that would be a misinterpretation of the evidence I gave to the Health Select Committee this morning, because we feel very strongly that this is a whole system problem. To blame one group of professionals, one group of managers, even one group of politicians is not terribly helpful when we're seeing a breakdown across the service.
So the Secretary of State has misinterpreted what you've said?
I think he quoted one line from what I said.
Selectively.
Well, he quoted the fact that I said that patients would go where the lights were on. And when we're talking about the reasons why there's overcrowding in A&E departments, we need to look at patient behaviour. And it's quite wrong to blame patients as well, in the same way that it's, I think, wrong to blame individual groups.
But where the lights are on, particularly for an elderly person, particularly for a mentally ill person, inevitably is A&E, and yet A&E is not really established to deal with either.
Well, A&E is the default position out of hours, and that is one of the reasons that A&E is overcrowded. So as part of the solution, we need to look at how other groups can contribute out of hours. GP services out of hours are an important part of this recipe. We know that we now have evidence that patients who are dissatisfied with out of hours access to their GPs do more frequently go to A&E departments. So that's one part of the solution, and we need to say to our colleagues in primary care and our colleagues in hospitals and our colleagues in mental care, how are you going to help this problem that's affecting the whole service?
The problem is you're never going to roll it back, are you? You're never going to retrieve a situation where a doctor and a practice that is trusted by the patient is back in service after 5 o'clock in the evening.
And I think things have moved on, and I think a much more sophisticated approach is required. What it would be really helpful to do is for those patients who we know have high rates of need, so those patients in nursing homes, those patients with chronic illnesses, there was some alternative to going to A&E in a crisis.
I'll conjure it in an austerity period. I mean, you know, the trouble is resources are diminishing for the elderly, resources are diminishing for the mentally ill.
The solution,
care in the community, does it exist?
The solution may be to ask for more money, but I think there are things we can do to redesign services, to redesign the way doctors, nurses, hospitals, managers, social services work in order to solve this problem.
So the fusion of social services and health, which it seems to be now envisioned, could well be a...
What's really unhelpful is the system of fining hospitals that's been used. So hospitals are fined when they keep people waiting. They're fined when ambulances are kept waiting. This hasn't been helpful.
Well, are you saying end targets?
I'm saying that some of the targets have been very useful markers of what's been happening. So the reason we're having this conversation today is that the 4-hour target has shown the weaknesses in A&E departments. But the 4-hour target as a sole clinical aim is not helpful.
Dr. Cadogan, thank you very much indeed for coming in.